Kakadosh Boker Or Shavua Tov. Masechet Chullin Daf Nuntet. We're doing Masechet Chullin Nuntet Amud Aleph 59a1, where it says in the Gemara as follows: Amar Rav Yudah says, Haiman dachal tlata tik lechilti taliba dekana. Somebody that's going to eat 3 shkalim of chiltit on an empty stomach, mishtelach mashkeh, is going to peel his skin. It comes and it starts that his skin starts feeling. Amar Rabbi Avu says Rabbi Avu, yeah, hava b'diavuvda. Happened to me. Yeah, he says, "V'achli chad tikla chiltit." I only eat 1 shekel of, which is a weight of chiltit. And if I wasn't in water, mishtalach mishkai. He says, my skin would have come off. He says, why? Because I knew how to get out of the problem, meaning he was in water. So he says, Amar Yosef, something that's going to eat 16 eggs, right, and 4 egozim and 72 and 7 gadinim of tzlaf, and he's going to drink a revita of dvash, right, and he's going to eat this b'tkuvat tamuz, aliba rekan on empty stomach, mitakar talya delibeh. He's going to be me'aker, he's going to uproot from the yetelibo, because basically all these things brings a person into mamash sakana. It's a danger. So he says, there was a tzvi, right? A young tzvi that came, a young deer that came into the house of Resh Kaluta, that the legs were cut at the back. Made it kosher. So he wanted to eat it the way that it was, right? Just roasting it. It says, says what? What about the nachash? What's the takana? Not betanura. Put it in the tanur. And then it's going to check it. And the basar started falling apart. What does that mean? Because of the eris, there was the poison. So nothing bad will ever happen to him. Right? The Kari Rav al Shmuel, and Shmuel went and he told, and Rav said about Shmuel that kol raz lo anislach. Right? There's the kol sod was not hidden from him. Obviously, he was like a doctor. Okay, because Shmuel was was very, very smart in all these things, like a doctor. So he went and he told him, you have to check it. Don't eat it that way, because if not, maybe it's got poison of a snake, and then it's going to be very, very problematic for you. Okay, back to the Mishnah. Mishnah says, Simane be'ema v'chaya ne'emru min Torah. Simanim of the be'ema and the chaya, domesticated animal and wild animal, is written already in the Torah. Simane ha'of, but the simanim of a bird is not written in the Torah. Aval amru chachamim b'tzei chachamim. Kol ofa dores, any type of an off which is going to be dores, which means that it picks up its nails, right, from the karka, right, it picks up the food. Tameh is going to be tameh. However, the kol sheish lo etzba yetera, if it's got an expa yetera, which is an extra finger, the zefek, right, and this zefek, I forgot how you said this in English, right, kul kabanon niklaf, tahor, it's going to be tahor. With the Zabur B'Tzadok Omer, kol ofa choleket ragav, if it's going to divide it's going to be when you're going to put it on the chut, right, and it's going to split 2 and 2, right, the legs. So he says it's going to be tameh. Uvachagavim, and we're talking about grasshoppers. Kol sheish lo arba raglaim, if it's got 4 legs, ve'arba knafaim and 4 wings, the kartzulim, right, which are the long ones, kunafav chofef rubo, and the knafaim are going to cover, right, the majority of the body. Okay, so then that's going to be tahor. The name is Chagav. That means you have to know that it's called Chagav, meaning the name has to be Chagav. It can't just be that it's got these simanim. Uvadagim, and to do the fish, kol sheish lo snapir v'kaskeset. If it's got snapir v'kaskeset, fins and scales. Rabbi Yudah omer shnei kaskesim u'snapir echad, even if it's going to have 2 scales and 1 fin. Ve'elu kaskesim kavua, these are the kaskesim which are going to be kavua in it. And then he says, v'snapirim apureach ben, right, which means that it comes and it makes it swim. So says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. אלו סימני בהמה, וכל בהמה מפרסת פרסה, אותה תאכלו. כל בהמה שמעלת גרה בידוע שאין לו שיניים למעלה, בטהורה. Meaning it's not going to have שיניים on the top, right? And therefore it's going to be טהורה. You have the footnote over there, where it says מעלה גרה, or חסרי שיניים חותכות קדמיות, right? Which means that at the front, they're missing the teeth. Okay? Now he says, Uklalahu, it's a general rule. But a gamal de malagirahu, Gamal is a Gmal Gera. Ve'en lo shinayim lemala. It doesn't have shinayim lemala. V'tameh. It's going to be tameh. Gamal says the Gemara, but Gamal niveitle. It still has nivim. What does that mean? The two shinaim chotchot on the sides, one on one side, one on the other. So he says vare ben Gamal the nivenamilele. Says what about the ben Gamal? Doesn't have that either, and it's still going to be tameh. The two and furthermore, the shafam v'nevet ma'ale gerahin. Yesh leim shinaim lemala. They do have the shinaim in the top. What mean? Ve'od, and furthermore, shinaim. Where's the written shinaim in the Torah? So says the Gemara, this is what it means to say. Kol be'ema she'en la shinaim lemala, if it doesn't have shinaim on the top, v'yadua she'i ma'alat gera mafretzah parsa v'teorah. We know that it's going to be ma'alat gera mafretzah parsa v'teorah. So says the Gemara, ve'livdok parsotea. So just check the parsotea, check its the hooves. So he says, Kigon sheyu parsotea chatuchot, they were cut like Rav Chasta. Dan Rav Chasta, ya melech b'mimar matzah b'ma sheparsotea chatuchot, bodek b'fiyah, check the mouth. Im en la shinaim lemala, if it doesn't have teeth on the top, yadua she'i, right, teorah. V'im lav nefnop, yadua she'i tmeah. U'bilvad she'akil gamal, as long as he knows how a gamal looks. But then he's going to see that the gamal also doesn't have shinaim lemala, and even though it's going to be malat gira, it's still going to be a problem because it's not mafris parsa. So says the Gemara, Gamal, Nivet, it does have some type of teeth on the things. He said, no. Elavivat Shekid Ben Gamal. So Lava Marta, Ika Ben Gamal, Ikanami Achrina, de Damil Ben Gamal. There's also another meaning, which is like Ben Gamal. So he says, Lo Sakadai, the Tanin Ishmael, the Gamal Ki Male Gerahu. So he says, Shaliba Mo Yodel Lecha Shen Lecha Devar Male Gera Tameh, Ela Gamal, Lefichach Perebo Akatuv Hu. ואמר רב חסדה, says רב חסדה, היה מהלך בדרך ומצא בהמה שפיה גמום. So you come and you find that there's going to be a behema, right, that the pia, the mouth is going to be gamum. בודק בפרסותיה. You're going to check the prasot. אם פרסותיה סדוקו בידו שהיא תורה, ואם לאו נפנות ביודע שהיא טמאה, ובלבד שיכיר חזיר. As long as you know what the chazir looks like. So he says, Lama Marta Ika Chazir Vikara Miminachet. There's also other things which are also like the chazir. He says, no, lo sagadaitach. Tane Shmuel Mafris, Veta Chazir Mafris Pasahu, Shalit Beolamo, Yodea Shelech Adavash Mafris of the Meel Chazir. The only thing in the world which is going to be Mafris Parsa, and it's going to be Tameh, is the chazir. Lefichach Paret, right? He says, Paret Bo Katuv Hu. That's why it specifically said, Hu. Okay, V'amar Rav Chasta, and says Rav Chasta, so Rav Chasta says, if a person was going in the desert to Matzah Be'emash and he found an animal, Shapia Gamum, that basically you can't check the mouth. You're going to check. If it's going to be the chote basar, which are going to go sheti va'erev, you know that it's going to be tahor. And if not, which means that you don't see that the bones are going in such a way, as long as you know that there's an arod is a chamor bar, that it also goes sheti va'erev, but it's still going to be tameh. So says the Gemara, lo amarta ika rod, right? Ve'ika nami min achrin. There's something else which is also like an arod. Meaning, if I only give you a siman, which is going to be one animal, but if I find another animal which is similar to it, but you don't recognize it, so then that's it. It's a problem. So Gemira, we also have the same Masoret Deleka. There's no other one like this. So where do you check the animal? You're going to check underneath the zanav, underneath the tail of the animal. Okay, fine. Simane chaya. We're talking about now the simanim of a chaya, of a wild animal. So Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. Elu simane. Yeah, he comes and he says like this. Elu simane chaya. These are the simane chaya. Chaya bichal be'ema hi simanim. So he says the chaya is part of the be'ema to do the simanim. Amar bizera and says bizera. Nun teta mubet. Latir chelba. What are we talking about? To be matir the chelef. Yeah, so he says, Yachi kamar, this is what we say. Elu en simane chaya shechelba mutar. Kol sheyesh la karnaim utlafayim. Bidosa Omer, Bidosa says, יש לה קרניים, אתה צריך לחזור לטלפיים. יש לה טלפיים, צריך אתה לחזור לקרניים. It means like this. To do the סימני חיה, he says, we talked about the חלבה מותר, but he says, if it's called קרניים וטלפיים, sorry, which means that the prasot of Sdukot, they're going to be split. Rabbi Dosa says if it's got the karnaim, so then you don't have to check about the telafim. Because the karnaim is a siman muvhat that it's already going to be kosher. And therefore, even if it's going to be nechtechu raglea, you don't have the feet at all, it's still going to be kosher. But if it only has a telafim, you still have to check the karnaim. The keresh is a type of a chaya, which we're going to explain. Aval bishelo keren achat, even though it only has one keren, it's going to be mutar. But remember, the chelev of a wild animal is always permitted. It's only the chelev of a domesticated animal that's going to be prohibited. So says the Gemara, he says uklala hu what? It's a klal. Yeah, he says vare is. What about an is? It's got karnaim and tlafim, and still the chelba is going to be asur. Yeah, because it says kol chelev shor v'chesev ha'ez lo tochelu. So answers the Gemara kruchot bainan. In order to be kovea that it's a chaya, right? We have to see that it's going to be the karnei are going to be kruchot, which means that they're made out of like different layers, right? Just like a klipa on another klipa. He says the karnei is or not. So says the Gemara, vare shor. The shor is kruchot, right? He says v'chelbo asur. So he says charukot bainan. You need them to be charukot. Okay, what is charukot? Meleot, pgimot, v'charitzim. The karnei shor, they're very straight. This has to be this way. So he comes and he says, okay, fine. Yeah. Nun teta mubet. So he says 59b, there in the middle, where he says, vare is the charukot v'chelbo asur. So it says, when I'm mefutzalot bainan, you need the mefutzalot. Right? What is mefutzalot? Right? That they're going to two different ways, directions. But it's tzvi. He says, what about the tzvi? Tzvi is not mefutzalot. And the chelbo is mutar. So he says, chaduro bainan. We need them chaduro, which are like round. So he says, Hilkach, therefore, it's going to be lo dina velo dayana. He says, right? He says it's lo dim velo dayan. What does that mean? We don't have what to judge because for sure it's going to be a chaya and it's teorah. But heicha de lo mefatzlaf, it's not mefatzla. Ve'inen kruchot chadurot v'charukot. You need all three of them. Vehu de mivlach hirkaihu. But it's going to be that you don't see. It's like muvla zebazeh. Behind usfeika the iza karkos, and that's a safek by the is in a certain place of karkos, because basically the karnav were chadarot and charukot, and that's the question whether it's going to be permitted or not, even though it's said in Furash in the Torah. No. Hayi izad karkos. David Beresh Kaluta was in the house of Resh Kaluta. Te'akul melet sanatar ba'minah. That they took a whole sal of chelef from its intestines. There was a whole machloket, are you allowed to eat it or not? Rav Achaya sar v'shmo b'rev debriya b'achal mineh. V'karnav shem imne fi ish tisba bitno. Which means that in the schar that kibalti halacha from my rabbis that permitted it, that's why I'm allowed to eat and I'm allowed to enjoy, I'm allowed to benefit from this is what we're having over here. Shalchu mitam, so they sent from there. Chata kavatid shmul bereder biyavu. V'yizauru b'rabenu achai shemeir enegolahu. There's going to be a meir enegolah. Okay, next. Keresh, afa bishel no keresh lechat, chelbo mutar. Amar Rav Yehuda keresh tavyad beilai. It's a tzvi of Ilai. Tigris is aryeh de beilai. Is the aryeh of the yar. So Amar Rav Kana teisha mata have ben una leuna daryeh de beilai. There's going to be 9 amot between one ozen and another one of beilai. So Amar Rav Yosef shitza ramata have mashchet de tavyad beilai. Amar lekesal Rabbi Yosef ben Chananya elokechem kayem matil. Tichtiv aryeh shag mi lo yira. So he says, my Revuta, what's the chidush? Parasha katil aryeh. Right? So he says, Amaleh, he says, Lav kehayad ya matil. He says, Karya deve matil. So Amaleh, Baina de Machzid le Nihali. Amaleh, so he comes and he tells him, Lo matzid chazili, you can't even see it. Amaleh, he says, Ibra bat chazina le. I did see it. Bemet, I want to see it. So Bara Chamevi, Takami duchte. The Aryeh, right, went from its place to come to the Caesar. Kevin Chikar ba mea parse, Nahim chad kala, he went and he was nohem, he roared, Apila kol mea barta. All the women, they were so afraid they had apala. The Shura de Romaina fell, and the wall of Rome fell. When it was 300 parsaot, roared again. People's teeth were falling out. And even the Caesar fell from his chair. So imagine, this is the Caesar, the Roman Caesar, telling Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya, I want to see this Aryeh. You understand? Like what? What's the big deal, basically? Yeah, this is called the Aryeh Matil. Okay. So he comes and he says, Amal b'matita minach, please, Barach melech go put it back in its place. Barach melech when he put it back in its place. Meaning basically he was afraid because he thought at the beginning, what's a big deal? It's a lion. Big deal lion. The second that this lion started coming, that's it. So Amal kesal Rishon Chanya says the kesat Rishon Chanya, Baina de ichze le'elokaichu. Yeah, he comes and he says, I want to see your God. Amarle, he says of Yeshua ben Chanina to Kesal lo matzit chazile. Amarle Ibra, however, though, yeah, chazina le. אזל הוקמה לעד יומה בתקופת תמוז, ואמר לי, הסתכל בי, אמר לי, לא מצינה, אמר לי, יום עד אחד משם שתקיים יקם לקודשה בריחו, אמרת לו מצינו, הסתכלו בשכינה, לא כל שכן. So he says, wouldn't be a כל שכן. So obviously you have, right, the same thing, that obviously you can't even come and be מסתכל. So קל וחומר, you can't be מסתכל, right, in the Shekhinah. Right, because basically he wanted to see the God, so he went and he says, I don't understand. You can't even start with it doesn't make sense. You can't see him. So he went and he said, no, I do want to see him. So he says, I don't understand. He says, if you can't even see the sun, so how are you going to come? You're going to see the God. That doesn't make sense. So, okay, these are just different stories with Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananiah. Shavuot Tov.